Hi, Father Ian Van Heusen here. So one of the things I struggle with from time to time is I get a little bit chubby here. Tim's been making fun of me. Dudes can talk about their weight too. It's not, we have to be concerned about our weight too, especially when we go to the doctors and he tells us to lose weight. So periodically I get out of shape, gain some weight, and then I have to kind of figure out some new strategies and lose the weight. And when I was younger, it was a lot easier. I'd just go for runs and I could get in shape pretty quickly. But I've learned over time is it basically boils down to two things: habits and circumstances, right? So there's those habits, getting in the habit of regular exercise, but then also controlling your circumstances. So for me, a lot of times is making sure that I'm getting the right food I need so that I'm not getting tired out, because it's a whole cycle. When I get tired, I don't have time for exercise, yada, yada. So you get the idea, right? Habits and circumstances. So that's what I've learned. But I think there's a deeper principle. So yeah, I learned that with weight management and exercise, but also apply it to your spiritual life. If you're struggling with mortal sin, or if you're struggling with some habitual sin that you're not able to overcome, look at the habits and look at the circumstances. So let's get into that and meditate on that as we get into the readings. So the first reading, Moses enters into a sacred space. He takes off his sandals and comes before the Lord in a burning bush. So I think this could be a great way of understanding how we need to enter into sacred spaces on a regular basis. So one, consider, do you have a sacred space within your own home? A kind of prayer altar, a place of prayer that you go to meditate on the Lord, to examine your heart. So creating that sacred space, but also how do you enter into the celebration of the Mass? When you're coming into church, are you coming in recollected, or are you coming in with a lot of anxiety so that you're not getting anything out of your celebration of the Mass? So we want to transition. So that taking off of sandals, we need to have time where we set aside the work of the day. We set aside responsibilities and take time to rest with the Lord and to explore. That's an incredibly important habit. But also we need to create the circumstances. So we can't just get into that zone. We need to adoration chapels, churches, sacred spaces within our homes, places that help us to unwind and to meditate on the goodness of the Lord. So that's one thing to consider. Let's also get into today's gospel and see it as a way of meditating upon this idea of habits and circumstances. So in Luke's gospel it says, there once was a person who had a fig tree planted in his orchard, and when he came in search of fruit and found on it, but found none, he said to the gardener, "For 3 years now I've come in search of fruit on this fig tree, but have found none. So cut it down. Why should it exhaust the soil?" So the tree's not bearing fruit. A lot of times, remember that whole definition of insanity. What is insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So what we need to do is we need to adapt to circumstances and create those circumstances for flourishing. So he says, "Sir," he said to him in reply, "Sir, leave it for this year also, and I shall cultivate the ground around it and fertilize it, that it may bear fruit in the future. If not, you can cut it down." So the whole idea that he wants to get into is, I'm going to try some new strategies. I'm going to try to create some new circumstances that are going to create that flourishing. So that's what we need to do as well. We need to be scientists with our life, experimenting, because it's by trial and error that we develop year after year those habits and circumstances which lead to our flourishing. So consider that in this week's spiritual exercise. Amen.